People say there is a first time for everything. A first kiss, your first car, the unrequited first love. However, what does this mean in the grand scope of things? Are firsts more monumental because they are the first, or do we get better with practice? Do we remember our firsts as more important than they actually were, holding on to that magical moment as a mark of our past and future selves? Do our firsts outshine what comes next? On A First Time for Everything, we will explore with our guests their firsts and how those impacted the seconds, thirds, and even countless times after. Is the first the best or merely the beginning? Or worse, was the first the last because it was so bad? We will dig into the recesses of our memories and consider whether or not a first was the start of something amazing or something we'd rather not remember. Come along with me, Juliet Rose, as I put our guests in the hot seat to analyze their firsts and how they defined who they became. I promise you're in for a fun, although maybe bumpy ride. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our show, First Time for Everything. Tonight, we're talking to the wonderful Jessica Nettles. I'm kind of excited because I know Jessica. We've done a few events together, so it's good to see you on this form here. But why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and where people can find you?
All right, so I'm Jessica Nettles. I write historical fantasy and Southern Gothic horror. You can find me at www.jessicanettlesauthor.com. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram, where you can watch me talk about my cats and my crochet and my cooking sometimes.
Yeah, and you're an amazing, I guess it is a crocheter or knitter. I don't know how that's.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love your work. Jessica wore a hat one time to an event we were at together, and I was like, "Hey, sell that," you know.
Oh, yeah.
Very good. And I just want to welcome Anita. Hello, Anita, to the show. Say hello real quick. Say hi. How are you? Good to see you again. And then just remind everybody to send a star to let us know how we're doing and how much you appreciate us here at Go Indie Now. And every time you contribute, you get entered into our season prize package drawing with gift cards, swag, and more. So feel free to do that and let your friends know about us. We're here. Yay. All right. Well, again, welcome to the show, Jessica. And so let's just jump right in. My first question always is kind of the lead off, which is, how did you know and when did you know that you wanted to be a writer?
I was 11. It happened really early. I wrote it was probably a really stupid story. And I wrote it for school, and a teacher liked it, and it was probably the first time I was really good at something. And I wasn't a very coordinated child, and I grew up in an area, when you live in rural Georgia, it's either athletics or it's pretty much nothing. At least in the 70s, that's the way it was. And I was not an athletic child. I was tiny and I was uncoordinated. So when the writing thing happened, it's like, I'm good at something. Oh my God. And so at 11, I'm like, okay, this might be a thing. And then 12, by the time I turned 12, it became, I think I might want to do this like forever and maybe make something of this. I didn't know what I was thinking, but I thought, well, maybe I could make something of it. Okay. So yeah, it started at about 11 or 12. At 12, I wrote my first 2 novellas. I have no idea where they are. But yeah, so I totally embraced the idea.
Yeah, I think my story is pretty similar. I know around 10. And then when I was in junior high school, I'd like write manuscripts and carry them around, Junior high school, I should tell you how old I am. Now it's middle school, but in junior high school,
yeah.
I had these manuscripts that I carried around with me and was very much obsessed with certain authors, which helped. I don't know for you if that was the case, but I really loved S.E. Hinton at that age. And so she really spoke to me on a level, and that helped me then go forward. And I'm sure a lot of my initial work was very similar to S.E. Hinton, and then I loved Smokey the Cow Horse, so I wrote a book about a horse. I definitely kind of at that time was like fan fictioning. But what about you? Did you have like favorite authors that helped?
Oh yeah, definitely. Ray Bradbury. For me, it was Bradbury. For me, it was Bradbury and Asimov and Silverberg and Andrea Norton and those people. So I liked Hinton, but I don't know that she really influenced me the way they did because I was devouring those books. They had our middle school was interesting. We had a really strong sci-fi section. I don't know who the librarians were, but if I could find out who got those books, I would go and absolutely kiss them. Because those books were lifesavers for me. Middle school was really hard. But those books, they guided me and they taught me how to put stories together. And sometimes they challenged me. I would read a story and go, you're 12, 13, so you're cocky. I'm like, I could do that. And then I go and do it, But Bradbury especially really spoke to me. Yeah.
Anita said a Bradbury.
I think he influenced a lot of people, Anita. There's this mixture of beauty because he was a poet too. His ability to mix beautiful language with really, tales of space and tales of the unknown and the supernatural, and mix that together. And people can say, oh, this is, genre's not literary. Bradbury's literary. Sorry, guys, it's true.
Yeah, you gotta watch out for the genre snobs. They really like to put everything into a box. I actually really particularly love nowadays Octavia Butler, and I hear a lot of that with her too. Oh, she's not this or she's not that. I'm like, she's everything. At least to me, she's everything. She's everything too. She's like hands down my favorite author. So I think that like having those influences throughout our lives really matter. I definitely went through different phases from like, S.E. Hinton, and I read, I read The Gone with the Wind, things like that. And then I got Stephen King in my teen years. And then, it continually evolves. And then I find when I'm writing, I do find little elements of all of that kind of weave together. Oh, yeah. Now, what about you? Do you feel like when you're writing, you kind of feel like you feel Ray Bradbury over your shoulder type thing?
Oh, yeah. And I call on Ray sometimes. I still go and I'll look at his Zen in the Art of Writing. And especially when I'm feeling stuck, I'll remind myself of things that he said in that book, like, go mind your childhood. Go look at your childhood fears. That's where all the good stuff is. He's right.
Yeah.
Some of the best things for my short stories come from childhood fear. And so he's so right about that. So I look at him a lot. And there are others that have added to the influence as I grew too, like Flannery O'Connor, and she's near and dear to me because she's a Georgia author too.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're both just a little bit cynical, and we both come kind of from a religious root, and we both are like looking at things going, really, and so that cynical kind of looking at things a little bit crooked. I look at her as kind of my mom,
I like that.
my literary mom.
Yeah.
She and Shirley Jackson, they're my literary moms. And so I look to them a lot and go back and read their stories and go back and think about, okay, how are they looking at the world? And, I don't copy that, but I can see that I see the world a lot like they do sometimes,
For sure.
Yeah.
I think there's that inspiration versus copying. There's like an inspiration, or maybe sometimes we're even drawn to writing styles that are us because we are that. Like for me, I really liked Octavia Butler because she takes these complicated concepts, but she puts it in a way that because the characters are so well developed, you don't have to figure it out. Like It's just, it's fed to you in a way. And like, that's how I write too. Like I tend to like that really like just clean, straightforward, here we go type of writing. So I think sometimes we are drawn to writers like ourselves because that's how we are. I was curious that you said something about the religious root, and that is a subject that if you're not comfortable, we don't talk about it, but I would be really kind of curious to know more about like that part and then how that influenced your writing, both positively and negatively, like for or against.
I don't mind talking about it. I was raised Southern Baptist. In fact, my parents are still Southern Baptist. It makes living with them very curious since I don't imbibe anymore. I was raised Southern Baptist. It was a very curious raising because you've known me long enough to know that I have kind of I say what I think. That's a very dangerous place for a girl, and especially a young girl in a Southern Baptist church. People don't like that. I left the Baptist church for that reason. Interestingly enough, in my former life, I was also a minister's wife, not a Baptist minister's wife, a Methodist minister's wife. That did not go over well either. I'm not cut out for that world. Once again, my mouth gets in the way. Those of you who know me are all laughing. I know, I hear you, I know. I think when you're raised in that kind of atmosphere, there's a lot of things that happen. You're exposed, at least, I think there's a level of fear that you learn really early on, and a level of you have to watch the things around you. At the same time, you're also exposed to this idea of the spiritual being all around you. And that's the positive thing, I think. And then in my household, my household was strange because we not only had this Baptist thing going on, but we had this supernatural thing going on. Okay. Because some people in my family can see ghosts and that kind of thing, including my mama. I cannot. And so I often joke that I walk on two sides of the world. There's the side of the world that's kind of reality, and then there's the kind of the world that's the supernatural stuff, and that includes the religious stuff. And so, you had to learn who you could talk to about that supernatural stuff and who you couldn't. And so it becomes very complicated very fast, and especially as you're growing up, you're like, okay, I'm living some really, and I'm sure, if you have any religious connections, you may have had some of the same stuff. But it also feeds into the storytelling really well, because when you come up like that, you realize the world really has maybe more than one element to see, that you can go around a corner and maybe things aren't as real as they could be, or maybe maybe the veil is there and maybe it's not. And I like to explore those thin places, and those places where maybe there can be creatures that live in the lake that look kind of like alligator people, and maybe there's communities of werewolves, and maybe there's another community that enslaved zombies, and I think here in the South, we're kind of primed for that anyway.
Oh, yeah. I think so. Well, it's interesting, like kind of looking at religion, looking at folklore, looking at how these things all kind of come into play. And my family's the same. My mother was very much, I would say, agnostic, if not an atheist. She was raised Catholic. I have a very Catholic family. I was at times sent to the Catholic Church. So I had this weird kind of like, I really didn't know as a kid what to feel, because like my mother was very clearly like, no, I believed in something spiritual. I'd go to her and say, I believe in something spiritual. I couldn't explain why. So I'd get sent off with neighbors to churches and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So I never really find what I was looking for there. But I had that same kind of like draw to that side, plus the supernatural. And then as a writer, I brought it all together to feel like it's all connected, at least for me when I'm mm-hmm. writing, and I get into sometimes the conversations about religion and in my stories to say, the characters will have conversations about religion. I always end up at the supernatural side. I mean, I never commit to like religion because I don't. I'm the same way. I'm just not something I partake in. But I have a spiritual side. And so like the supernatural and the spiritual side just seem to mesh really well for me. Like it's not a conflict. Yeah. But sometimes religion and supernatural can be conflicted.
I think religion and spirituality are very different things.
Yes.
Some people may be offended by that, but I think it's true. Religion is practice. Religion is, what's the word I'm looking for? Dogma.
I agree. Yeah.
Spirituality is connecting I think, to that supernatural element. It's connecting to the thing that we perceive as bigger than ourselves, whatever that is. And in my stories, at least in my horror stories, when religion comes up, oftentimes it is the vehicle for not so good things. Because sometimes when we practice dogma without the connection to the spirituality, and we forget about that spiritual connection to the bigger thing, we trap ourselves and we trap others. And I think that's where we go wrong. And now I'm saying things probably that are really offending people. So yeah.
I don't think so. I think anybody honestly, I feel like this conversation, it's okay to have, because I think that's how we define our beliefs and how we define, really the path that we decide to take. And I don't think anybody should be offended by that. We all have to figure that out. Like I said, as a child, I was literally going with people to try to figure this out for myself. And as an adult, I came to the point where I believed in something, but it wasn't anything I was finding in a church. And that was okay.
Right.
I still respect if people need to do that, but that's just not for me, so
yeah, every path is different,
right?
And I think whatever path you find that gives you peace, that's the right path.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, for sure. And so, okay, so let's kind of circle back onto, so you started writing when you were, say, 11 or 12 and you wrote the story. Did you continue to write from that point, or did you have like a gap and then you put out something later in life?
Okay, so I wrote through high school. I started exploring poetry. I'm really bad at poetry. I got involved with the literary magazine at high school. We had a literary magazine, which was awesome. It was the place where all the weirdos hung out. That's where I learned to play Dungeons and Dragons. That's where I met a lot of really cool people. That's also where I met my ex-husband. We won't go there unless you really want to. And then I went to college and worked on the literary magazine at KSU for a couple of years. And then something that could have been fatal but wasn't happened. I got married. And I stopped writing. And there's any number of ways to express why. The best way is to say that I married a narcissist and the narcissist crushed things. And I wanted to write, but there was nothing coming out. And this went on for about 10 years. So during my 20s, I did not write. And then the divorce happened. And I started writing again and decided to go back to college and got the divorce all at the same time when I turned 30. So I'm going to school. I'm working. I have 2 little bitty kids. And I'm trying to write all at the same time. And I started writing short stories again. At this point, I'm starting to read Gaiman. So I'm reading. Let's see, what did I read? Smoke and Mirrors. I read, which is a really great anthology, or not anthology, but collection of his stories. I read that my first year back in college, and the thing that's great about that particular collection is that he doesn't just have the stories. He explains the creative process behind the stories. And I needed that. I'm like devouring this thing because I'm like, okay, I want to understand creative process. So I read that, and at the same time I read On Writing by Stephen King. Saved me, right? And what struck me the hardest was that my creative process really wasn't that far off from what they were doing. And it stunned me because, King's both of those guys are really damn prolific, like scary prolific. I'm not. I'm slow. lot of the way that they see things, like King sees things in snapshots. I do too. A lot of the creative process with music, Gaiman uses a lot of music. All of that made sense to me. And so little old me in college at age 30 is like just devouring this. And yeah, I did too. The comics really helped as well for me. Sandman got me through the divorce. Yeah, which sounds really weird because it's really dark shit.
It's really dark.
Really dark shit.
But sometimes it helps our own emotions. Like we're able to kind of push it off into something else that's darker. Like sometimes it helped us process what we're going through.
Oh yeah. I was doing Sandman and listening to Dead Can Dance during that period. I was in total darkness. And it helped me survive. It really did. Sandman was the best. And so I started writing again, and I started taking classes at KSU, and started taking creative writing classes because there were a couple of story writing classes. And so I started doing that. And at first my stories were really bonky. And then I started figuring out that if I wrote about like Southern things and digging around in my mess from living in Southern Alabama for 3 years with my ex, I could write pretty good stories. And at that point, they were really pushing us to write literary, not genre. And I wasn't really, considering myself writing, horror or anything at this point. But I started writing stories, and then I began to notice that a lot of my stories had ghosts in them. And then I wrote a play, and then I wrote another play. And the second play actually has a ghost in it because she's the main character. And then I graduated with a BA, and then I graduated with a master's. And yeah, it just kind of went from there. And I got to writing more and more, and then it sort of things really started kicking off probably about 2014. That's when it started. 2015. That's when I started really pushing, because my kids were getting grown and I could focus then.
Yeah, and what I love about your story, and it's similar to mine, is that a lot of people think like, if you don't do this in your 20s, you're not going to do it. And I think it's the opposite. I think that I was something. I actually went through a divorce. I had 2 small kids. I didn't write in that time just because I had children and I was working and trying to get by. So I didn't really start writing until my children were grown. And but what I got out of that was all of this experience of all these decades, right? That I wouldn't have had at 20. And that I've put into my stories. I weave those things in. And I want to say to people, don't think because you're not doing it in your 20s or because you're struggling that it won't happen at 40 or 50 or 60 or 70. It doesn't matter. Just do it. So like, if you have that in you, do it, because you're going to bring a lot more to that because of your experiences that you've had in your life.
Absolutely. You are not a failure because you did not publish at 20. And I tell people that all the time. It's like, you just getting started.
Exactly. Yeah. And even if you publish at 20 and then you have a big gap, that's okay too. Like, ultimately just come back to it. And I'm glad I did. And for me, what brought me back to writing was actually a short story contest for an anthology. And I was like, okay, I've had this short story rattling around my head for like 2 decades. Let me write it down. And I submitted it. And once I did that, boom, like the gates opened. And so I think I like that about your story, because I think people need to hear that it's like, you have all the time in the world. Like it doesn't matter what age you are. If you want to be creative, but do the work. I mean, obviously you have to sit down and do it. And like you said, you're slow. Slow is still progress, right?
That's right.
And so was Menlo Park your first book?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's the first book that was published. There is another book that is hidden away that I wrote with a friend. I won't say it's a bad book, but it's a proto book, and it's actually high fantasy. It's based on our 2 D&D characters who are cousins. Hi, Melissa. I love you. I love you. I love you, Ren. I love you, cousin. Yeah. So yeah, it was the first novel turned out to be like 125 pages, so we did pretty good. But it's not great. But it was a great place to cut teeth and to figure out kind of, how does this thing kind of work? And then Menlo Park was like, it was a mash of a couple of ideas that I had, and then I'm like, now's the time. I had turned 50. I'll be honest. I turned 50. Another friend who I knew had written a book and published, and it sort of pissed me off. I'm like, what the hell? I'm the one that's the writer, and you've got a math major. What the hell? And I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it now. And it just happened. The ideas came together, and I'm like, I need this. I talked to, there's a couple of people I talked to. I talked to the late Jim Moore. I don't know if you ever met him.
I never met him, but I think we were friends on Facebook.
Oh my God. I wish you could have met him. He was astonishingly supportive. And I met him at the very first Broadleaf, and I talked to him about my ideas, and he's like, well, just sit your ass down in the chair and write, which is totally Jim. And then I saw him again in another conference, like maybe about 4 months later. And so I kind of asked him about it again. And he told me the same thing, just sit your ass down in the chair and write. And basically his writing partner, Charles Rutledge, said, if you write an hour a day, you can get about 1,000 words in, and, in a few months you'll have a book. Well, I don't quite get to 1,000 words a day usually. I usually get to about, on a good day, I'll get to 700-800 words. And I still managed to do it. So I managed to get a novel in about 9 months.
Nice.
And this is a big deal for me because I always said that I was a short story writer. I was not a novel writer. And so I just kept going and kept going. And then suddenly 9 months later, I had 135,000 words. And I'm like, holy crap, what did I just do? And then things fell into place. It can happen.
It can. And they're good words. I've read Menlo Park. It's
Thank
a really
you.
good book, and I enjoyed it a lot. So, and again, that kind of goes back to there's no, I guess there's no rules, I guess, to it. Like, no matter what age you are, how fast you write or whatever, just do it. Like,
just do it.
In a way, and some people write 10,000 words a day. I don't know how to do it. Whatever, great, good for them. But it doesn't mean that my 2,000 words or your 700 aren't, don't matter. So it's about
all valid.
Consistency is what I've realized. It's just about saying, no matter what, even if I'm just writing a couple paragraphs, I'm going to do something today, and that really matters. What would you say as far as like confidence? Did you feel like confidence played into your ability to write, or no?
At first it was fear of failure.
Me too.
Because I mean, because I've tried things like NaNoWriMo before and failed miserably. And so I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I've got to be serious about it. And so what I would do is I had a big mirror in my bedroom, or in my bathroom, my main bathroom, and I got a chalk marker, and I wrote on the word count I wanted to get to and the date I wanted to get to it by. And my fear was always that I wouldn't get there in time. And so for the first few months, it was pure fear that I was not going to finish it. And then when I hit about 40 or 50,000 words, I'm like, well, this is cool. This is kind of for real. I mean, really, now I want to see what's going to happen. And I want to see if I'm going to, how I'm going to get to the end, because I knew what the end was going to be. I knew that we were going to end up, I better not tell the end. There's going to be a big fight at the end. And I just don't know how I'm going to get there yet. and I kept meeting more characters. In the original draft, there were actually all 13 children, by the way.
Oh, wow.
I had to, yeah, it was a lot. There was also a great train fight, but I traded it for the jetpack fight. So I'm only a little sad about that. So, you know, by the time I got to that point, I was like, okay, I need to like figure out if I'm going to actually be serious about this and shop this or not. And so I think that's where maybe a little bit of a weird sort of confidence kind of kicked in, because I did something absolutely insane. I went to Jordan Con, and somebody got me in, and I walked into the vendor's room, and there was John Hartness. And if you guys have never met John, so I know some of you have, you guys know he's this big, huge biker looking dude, right? So I come around the corner in the vendor's room, and there's John at the table, and the Falstaff table is about a quarter of the size that it is now. There he is, standing there with his books. Big biker dude selling books, supernatural books that look really cool. I'm like, and I blinked for a minute and went, what the hell? And I'm like, I've got to talk to this guy. I talked to him for an hour and picked his brain and walked away and went, I think I've almost sold a book. Holy crap. Because he gave me his card and he said, when you finish it, send it. I'm like, so, I mean, things just kind of fell in place. And you have to understand, at that point in time, I wasn't good at doing that kind of crap. I didn't just walk up and talk to people.
Yeah.
I really don't know what possessed me. I really don't know. Other than I knew I had a pretty decent story, and I really wanted to see it fly. And I didn't know what that looked like. I just knew I wanted it to happen. And when I saw John and really talked to him, I walked away and I'm like, part of me was like, I think he's going to be my publisher. I think. I was terrified that he was going to read it and hate it, but I pushed that back. I'm like, no, it's going to be fine. But yeah, a lot of it was terror. I think confidence eventually kicked in, but most of the time I'm terrified.
Yeah, like that. So I know John too. I met John initially at Multiverse last year. Just a quick hello. Didn't really stop to talk. Same thing. I'm pretty introverted. I'm not like somebody that usually goes up and talks to people. So I saw him at Atomicon, and this time I was like, I just need to go talk to him. I need to stop being afraid of like. So I just watched him. We started chatting, and we were on a panel together the next day. Which was fun because I walked in and we didn't have a moderator, and John turned to me and said, you're going to be the moderator for this, right?
That's how he does it.
I was like, okay. I thought he was joking. And then as we got talking, because it was him, it was B.L. Brown, and then Grady Hendrix, and then him and me. And then he turns to me again and he goes, and Juliet will be moderating. I'm like, I guess I'm moderating,
That's how he does things. This is how he gets out of doing things himself.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you this.
So yeah, so John he's a really awesome guy, but I think a little intimidating for a lot of people at first. So that's pretty impressive that you walked right up there and pretty much sold your book. So because you did,
right? I still don't know exactly how I did that because I was just babbling. I don't even remember what I said. Beyond, I remember him saying, "So what do you like to read?" And the rest of it, I don't know until he gave me his card and I walked away. I have no idea what I said. But funny. I must have said something good because he remembered me and actually poked me and asked me if I, like 4 months later, and said, "Hey, are you coming to Dragon?" And said, why don't you come out to Thursday and come to BarCon? And I got to hang out with him and Jonathan Mayberry, who I didn't know who Jonathan was at the time. I didn't realize what a big deal he was. So I'm sitting right next to him, and Daryl Grizzle, who is a great friend and a really incredible writer, was sitting with me. He'd come to hang out with me. Daryl's melting down and freaking out because we're sitting with Jonathan. And I'm like, oh, it's just a guy in a Hawaiian shirt. Okay. And he's like, you know what he's written. And he told me, and then I started freaking out because he's written like some X-File books and a whole bunch of other things and that are really, really important. And I'm like, and you know, I sort of got a hint that something was going on when he started like talking about Joe Hill and Stephen King like they were really good friends. I guess I should have gotten a hint. I don't know.
But this is what I love about the writer community is just that. Like we, you know, when you're at events, you're doing things and you're talking, like when I was on the panel with John and Grady and Britta, you know, like at no point did I ever feel like I was out of place. I felt like I was talking to other authors, and no matter how successful they were, or what, you know, how well known they were, it was just like talking to you. We're talking, you know, like we were just chatting. Right. And there's such a comfort level and such an openness in the writer, you know, industry. With authors, they're always supporting each other. You know, like really good authors still want to be there and support up and coming authors, you know, and help them get out there. And so there's like that real beauty in basically this community that we have.
Yes.
And anybody who isn't that way is usually pretty quickly found out. I will say that. Like,
absolutely.
Well, usually like, not you though. But yeah, no, I've been very impressed. No matter when I've gone cons and I've done different events, just that level of like welcoming and support and bringing you into the fold is really awesome. And I hope people out there understand that like writers are really supportive of each other. There's very little, at least in my opinion, very little competition.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't feel like there's any, I've never felt any competition at all. I feel very, very blessed. It's a great community.
It really is. It really is. And like you and I met at an event, same thing. We were supporting each other, trying to figure out how to get people over to us, which was difficult.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That was a tough event. Like, hey.
Always fun.
All right. So kind of getting back to like first. So like you put out Menlo Park. Did you hit any roadblocks or did you get any kind of like negative reviews that made you question, or did you feel like that just pushed you to get better and move further?
You know, I don't pay attention a lot to reviews. Occasionally I'll read them, but I've only had really one negative review and it was hilarious. The guy who reviewed it didn't like it because I made Tom, I guess I can say this. Tom Sodson's the bad guy. Okay, guys? Because he really is. He sucks. And the reviewer was just like, I can't read a book where Thomas Edison is the bad guy. And I'm just like, well, sucks for you. And I thought that was hilarious. And I'm like, well, this is the worst review that I can get, then I guess I'm okay, you know? And I mean, I kind of look at it, I mean, I'm a teacher, so, you know, they have like rate your teacher, right? I don't read those either.
Yeah.
Because all that does is just, you know, you read it and then you feel terrible and it really doesn't mean anything. And it's not to say that the reviews that people put out about your book don't mean anything. That's not what I'm saying. You can't let those words break you or hold you back from what you're supposed to be doing. I'm going to tell a story and I'm going to write that story and maybe get it published. And there's always going to be those people that really think it's the best thing ever. And there's going to be those people that are going to go, I really hate this. And that's okay. You know, I'll just write another story and maybe you'll like that one.
Right.
And you know, and I'm going to be happy with my stories. I mean, there's some stories of mine that I'm not exactly as happy about as others. So it's okay. But no, I don't let reviews hold me back. Life's too short and I've got too much to do.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting because you think of like music. So say we like certain music, we don't like certain music. So we like certain genres, we don't like certain genres. But even within the genres we do like, even within an album that we like, there might be a few songs in there we don't like, you know?
Right.
And it doesn't mean that music isn't good. It just means that our preference is we don't like that. And I feel the same way about reviews for that reason. I'm like, I'm not for everybody. I'm okay with that.
Right.
You know,
right.
And for some people, they might like this book, but they don't like that book. That's okay too.
Right.
Because ultimately, there's not 100% of anything, you know.
Right.
It's just how it is. So, but we put a lot of people put a lot of pressure on themselves to get that, like, you know, to only have 5-star reviews or whatever. And it's impossible. And so then they start to feel like it's a reflection of their writing, and it's not. It's a reflection of the fact that you can't please everybody all the time.
Yeah. A review is about the person who is reading that book. It is not about you as that person. People bring a lot of things to the table when they read a book. Okay. It's a relationship. You know, I'm bringing stuff to the table when I write something, but you also bring something. And you're going to filter that story through whatever experience you have.
Yep.
I can't control that. I can only control what I brought to the table. And yeah, I mean, even some of the writers I love, like you said, there's some things, some of their stories I don't care for. Neil Gaiman, there's some of his stories I don't care for.
Right.
They don't push my button.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm okay with that.
Well, it's like one of my favorite books is A Monster Calls.
Yeah.
And I'm just drawing a blank on the author. It was Patrick, but for some reason I'm drawing a blank. But I don't really care for anything else he wrote. I just don't. Like, I said, okay, well, I really loved this book. It's my favorite book. I'm going to go read some other stuff. And it just wasn't for me. It wasn't bad. Great story. Still recommended to other people. Just wasn't for me. You know, and that's okay. And I think we as authors have to take on that same mentality. We're not for everyone. It's okay. You know, you don't go to a restaurant and order everything on the menu. You pick out what you want. And that's exactly what we have to see our work as being.
Yeah. And, you know, we're all special flavors. So that's
aren't we? Aren't we? I don't even want to know what flavor I am.
That's okay. I haven't figured out my flavor either. I mean, every story is a little different. And I'm always surprising myself. I mean, Menlo Park, people will read Menlo Park and then they'll read my short stories and they'll go, what the hell? You know, because it's so different. And even then within my short stories, I can be so different. I can write like a Southern Gothic tale, and then you turn a corner and I've got space horror, you know, and you turn another corner and, you know, it's universal monsters fighting Nazis. You know, what the heck?
Right.
So who is this woman? I don't know. I don't know who I am most of the time. You know,
that's me. I always I write everything from contemporary fiction all the way to horror and everything in between. It just depends on what pops in my head that day.
Yeah. Gosh, Possession was so good.
But other books, not so much. And what I wanted to say kind of in reference to her comment was like, if we get offended by a review, we have literally guaranteed that reader is never going to read us again. Because they're like, well, not only like I didn't care for the book, but now this person's rude to me. So like, it's okay to just like not. First of all, please don't comment, people. No need to comment.
Never comment. Never
just
comment.
Burning bridges.
And don't comment back to the reviewer. Don't talk about it on social media.
Yes,
it's not worth it. I've watched authors set themselves on fire over a stupid review.
I have too.
Why?
It's like, it's okay to just say, you know what? It's just something you walk away from, but they will, they'll try to get, I don't know what the motivation is. Are you trying to get justification? Are you trying to get, I don't know, sympathy? But I've seen people do that, post it with the person's name and everything. And I'm just like, don't do
that. I think it's an ego thing, but you know, I hate to speculate because then we start picking on people but I just don't have time. I don't read my reviews most of the time, just because I've got too much going on, you know, between grading papers and trying to figure out how I'm going to finish my second novel and try to finish, you know, stories that I've said, oh yeah, I'll do that anthology because I'm crazy.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have time to go and pick over my reviews or how my sales are doing on Amazon at any given moment, you know, of the day. It stresses me out. I don't need that in my life.
Yeah.
I would rather go have ice cream.
Me too. Yeah. I think it's definitely change the vibe of the day. You be in a good mood, then you see something like that, and it can change the vibe of your day. So it's better just to skip it all together.
Oh yeah.
Go on with your day.
Yeah.
Doesn't change anything. So
yeah, let me go have ice cream. Let me go take a walk. No problem. You know.
All right. So what is a first that you would rather forget?
Oh. Ooh. First marriage? Only marriage?
Actually, been a common answer.
So. I mean, there's a part of me that there are good things that came out of that marriage. They're called my children. And that part I don't want to forget because they're awesome. I was very young. I was 19.
Oh, me too. We have that in common.
Yay! The 19 Club.
Oh,
I was like 1 month shy of my 20th birthday. It was foolishness. I don't know what I was thinking, except that I was 19.
And yeah,
you're 19 and you think you know everything.
You know everything.
Yeah, you're 19. You know everything. Yeah, that's probably the one thing that there's part of me that wish I hadn't done that, but at the same time, I've gotten a lot of fuel from that experience for writing. Because here's the crazy part. We moved to Southern Alabama and lived there for about 3 years. The majority, well, the little world where my Southern Gothic horror happens in Southern Alabama. And it's because, because I lived there. And so I have a lot of feels, and we had a lot of just really strange experiences there. And so when I started really tinkering around with writing horror stories, it just sort of came out of, I'm like, well, I could write about this, and then I could write about, I could take those people and turn them into this. And so there are things that I am sad about that relationship and that I regret deeply. And then there's parts and things that I don't. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah. I had a first marriage where my children came from too, and I was married for quite a long time. My ex-husband was military, so we were married for about 18 years. And
wow.
So there's positives and negatives, obviously, that came out of that, but I use it all in my writing. So certain experiences that are positive, other experiences that were more negative, but I use it not necessarily directly, but maybe like feelings or, kind of what I took out of it, I create into characters. So I feel like even though, I kind of like I wasted 18 years of my life, I also feel like I got a lot out of it. Obviously my children, which I would never do, they're awesome. But even just having moved around the country and then different experiences in that relationship and being that young, in that relationship and having to learn not only what it was like to be in a relationship with somebody else, but still figuring this myself out, so like having to really like go back and be like, okay, like I need to learn this about myself. Why did I make that decision? So I think with every negative, there's always some positive. Like that we can use. So, that's why I like that question, because it is one where it's like people are like, sometimes they'll quickly be like, oh, my first marriage. But then they're like, and that's exactly it. As writers, we always need to know about the but. What else came out of that? What good came out of that?
Absolutely. If it's not a learning experience, then there was no reason for it. And that's the way I look at the marriage. It was a huge learning experience, and it forced me to grow up. And, that wasn't a bad thing. So.
No, yeah. And I think that's the healthy way to look at it, is just, like this is still a part of your evolution to you now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, we're going to pull up the wheel. Let's see. It's not that bad. I'm actually running out of things on the wheel too. I'm actually getting down to the nitty gritty on the wheel here. So let me share this. All right. Can you see the wheel?
Yes.
Let's give it a spin.
Oh, Lord.
First chosen style.
Oh, my God. Oh, let's see. For a long time, I didn't really, I don't know. This would have been the 80s probably. And God, ooh. Um, it took me a little while to figure out myself, and I think a lot of us are that way. But that was probably the first time I really started paying attention and realizing, well, two things happened in the mid 80s. One, I finally realized that I was never going to be tall. For those of you who really are not aware, I'm only about 4'8". I'm tiny. And at that point, I was about 100 pounds. Seriously. So there weren't a lot of role models as far as how to dress, except there was Markie Post. Remember her from Night
Yeah.
Court? I wanted to look like Markie Post because I thought she was awesome. I am more curvy than Markie Post, but and if I'd had more money, I would have definitely dressed more like her. But that was my first real chosen style because I was starting to, 1986, 87, I was 19, 20, 21. I had gotten married and I was beginning to work, and I really wanted to look like that. Now, did I achieve it? Probably not. But that's what I really wanted because she looked great all the time. And she wore paisley, and I still love paisley. I have some pants that I wore today. Paisley. Beautiful. I love that style. And so, yeah, that was probably my first chosen style, unless, well, no, probably my very, very first chosen style was wearing red, wearing red when I was little bitty, and I still love wearing red. That's like one of my favorite colors. So,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because, like, I think about chosen style. One of the problems I ran into was the opposite of what you ran into, which is I was really tall, and they did not make tall women's clothes or tall girls' clothes at that time. Like, everything was one size, and so everything I wore was floods. Just how it was.
No.
So I really just, even if I was trying to have a style, it just never worked out. So the first chosen style I really had, I just went off the rails. And I went punk, and I shaved the sides of my head and I dyed the rest of it orange. And I wore like rolled up camouflage pants of like probably a brother or cousins, and lace, and like all this kind of weird combination of stuff. That was my first chosen style, because I realized I was never going to be stylish because I couldn't find clothes that looked good to me. So I just started picking things out that I thought I wanted to put together. And I had I remember going to, what was it, Pee-wee's Big Adventure? Was that the movie that came out? Saw that, and I literally went with my boyfriend at the time, who had like a mohawk, and I was like 13 or whatever, and that was probably my first chosen style. I don't have pictures of unfortunately at the time because I was not living in a good home environment, so I didn't. But yeah, that was my weird. And I'm kind of still weird that way.
It's pretty awesome. I think if I had lived in a less conservative household, I would have absolutely gone completely new wave.
Yeah.
I would have had the very, very short hair and gone completely Annie Lennox on everybody.
I can see that.
It would have been awesome. Yeah. She was like another one of those fashion icons for me.
Yeah.
I still think she's just beautiful. That whole tailored look, and actually as we moved into the 90s, I actually wore and ended up getting a pinstripe suit and wore that to work. It was like the best thing ever. And I like that tailored look sometimes. But yeah, I mean, to a large degree, because of my size and because of a lot of different things, yeah, I ended up throwing things together a lot too, and not really trying to figure out my style. It took me a long time to figure out. And what I've learned is my style is ever evolving. So like I just went through, I've just gone through another evolution of of how I'm looking. So my wardrobe is shifting right now. And so I'm going through a blue phase for some reason. I don't know what's going on with that, but yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, mine just kind of like nowadays, I just embrace. I have so many different things in my closet. It's whatever I wake up that day and feel like my style is, then I'll dress like that.
Yeah. And a lot depends on where I'm going to. So at work, there's certain things I can't wear to work. So like the little Lynn Hanson dress that I wear when I go to, sell books and stuff, I can't wear that to work.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I probably could, but I won't. But I love wearing that dress.
Her dresses are beautiful. I have one too. And the material is, I love the feeling of it. It's like not wearing anything. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's so comfy. And I don't really like wearing dresses, but I'll wear that dress. Yeah, a lot for me is comfort based, but also I kind of like looking cute. So, if I find something I feel cute in, I will do it. And the funny thing is, I feel more free about that now. And I'm over 50. I'm pushing 60. It's crazy. And I feel more free now than I ever have about that. It's like, I'm going to wear what I'm going to wear. It don't matter because I feel cute.
Yeah, I think 50 really brings up on the I don't give a fuck kind of. I mean, that's how I was. I was like, I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm just going to wear what I want to wear at the moment I want to wear it. That's it.
Oh yeah.
But I worried. I mean, I think my 30s I started to see that shift. And then my 40s and then by 50s I literally was just like, I really don't care ever again anymore.
Yeah. Never again. I mean, I do my makeup because I like to look cute, and that's it. If I feel cute, I'm good. Yep. That's all that matters.
That's me too. All right, let's do one more spin of the wheel.
Okay.
We're getting low on it, so we'll see what they have. Okay, I wasn't sure.
Ooh, okay.
All right, first obsession.
Oh.
And that could be anything, even when you were a kid, if you were just obsessed with whatever.
Dinosaurs.
Were you?
Absolutely dinosaurs. I can remember when I first started really reading, and this was maybe when I was 4 or 5 probably. And I discovered the encyclopedia because I was one of those weird kids that read the encyclopedia for real.
Me too.
And I discovered, oh gosh. And I discovered dinosaurs. And then I discovered there were books about them. I actually, the first report I ever wrote wasn't for school. I wrote it for myself. I wrote a report for myself about dinosaurs. I was totally obsessed with it. I loved everything about them. I read everything I could about them. And I still kind of really love dinosaurs. I think they're awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah. So there's a little 6-year-old me in there going, yay, dinosaurs. And, and I just think they're cool. And so I'll listen to, I'm fascinated with archaeology because of dinosaurs.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I always joke that I was a horse girl, which I was. But honestly, I can say roller skating was mine, and it still is. It's something I still absolutely love. However many years that is, and I started skating.
That is so cool.
5 or 6, and now I'm still, skating. I actually at one point lived on my roller skates. Like I would wear them as shoes. My mother just let me. I don't know what her problem was because we lived in like second story, narrow stairs, whatever. But I used to go up the stairs in my little roller skates and downstairs in my roller skates.
Wow.
So that was my.
I skated in middle school a little bit, and then sometimes as an adult I have skated. I am not very good at it. Once again, not very coordinated. I can ice skate too a little bit, but once again, not very coordinated. I spend a lot of time on the ground, and it's fun. And for a while in middle school, I actually got okay with it. I was going almost every weekend because once again, we're that generation that roller skating was a thing, right?
Yep.
It was a social thing. If you wanted to socialize at all, you went roller skating. But I was never really good at it. And so, yeah, I admire the fact that you get on those roller skates. It tickles me to death because I'm terrified of getting on the roller skates and falling and breaking something.
It's a valid fear. Yeah. I always say, I joke though, I broke my leg 2 years ago walking.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, it could happen anyway. So, right.
So. All right. Well, it looks like we're out of time, but will you go ahead and let everybody know again where they can find you and if you have any upcoming events?
Okay. So you can find me at www.jessicanettles.author.com. You can find me on the Facebook. You can find me on Instagram, Steampunk English, where you'll see pictures of cats. You'll see pictures of my latest crafts with the crochet. Occasionally you'll see my baking and other silliness. The next event I have is, let me stop and think. It will be at the Viking Alchemist Meadery, and that's going to be on June 8th. I think that's right. It's a night event. It's my first night event. I'm so excited. There's going to be mead. There's going to be my books. There's going to be crochet. And my friend Melissa Davis is going to be with me with her watercolors. Her watercolors are gorgeous, guys. She sells bookmarks. She sells greeting cards, and they are gorgeous. And you should come out and see them and buy them and buy books to go with her bookmarks because really.
And where is that at?
It is in Smyrna, Georgia.
Smyrna, okay. That's what
you can find them on Facebook. I think they have a website too. The mead is excellent, by the way. They make it right there on site. So yeah, it's really good. So I'm looking forward to that. There's also a short story coming out, I think, but I don't know anything about the timeline yet. There's an anthology that's coming soon, Southern Fried Cthulhu. I'm really excited about this. It is the story that I submitted is a continuation of my Southern Gothic horror stories series for those of you who follow along. Crazy things are happening in Eulela again. So
awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I had a great time talking to you. And again, thank everybody for tuning in. We always appreciate it. And remember, it's always time for Go Indie Now.